Hello, 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 and welcome to not quite another episode of the Best Games period. This week, obviously, Labor Day kind of threw us off a little bit. The episode's going up a little bit late. Please stick with us. The schedule got all mixed around. This week, we don't actually have a full episode for you. Instead, we have a long, in-depth discussion of No Man's Sky between myself, Jack Gardner, and Daniel Jones from a couple weeks ago, as we were kind of trying to sort out our opinions on where it falls. It's not a discussion of if it's a best game period or not. We're not making that judgment. Obviously, it didn't come out very long ago, so there kind of needs to be a little bit more time before we jump to any conclusions one way or the other. So, just kind of take this as an interesting discussion. I think we both Daniel and I had a good time chatting about it. It's at the very least an interesting conversation on the subject of No Man's Sky, although by now you may have heard it talked about to death. So, take it for what it is. It's not going one way or the other on the game, but by the end of the episode by the end of the not quite episode, you'll have an idea of where we both stand on No Man's Sky, possibly one of the most divisive titles of 2016 so far. Enjoy.
Have you been playing No Man's Sky too?
I have, yes.
So,
I wrote up a little impressions piece about that.
I read that.
All right.
But that was after one day.
Yes.
So now, after more than a week, how are you feeling about it? You said it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not feeling terribly different than when I wrote my impressions.
Okay.
I haven't had a vastly different experience as I've played more.
Yep.
And I'm kind of torn because I'm not entirely sure if it is intentional. I'm not sure if some of the things I'm seeing in the game are intentional or if they are artistic choices. Because I definitely see ways that you could interpret the game mechanics and the way the universe is kind of spread in this current build of the game. It might change in the future with patches and updates and such, but I can see where there are arguments for and against it.
Such as what?
Like, there are some people who say that it can be repetitive.
Yep.
And can get bland and boring after a while. I can see that argument. But I also think that part of No Man's Sky's artistic statement is, people have pointed this out, but that you are insignificant.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And the game doesn't really care if you're flying around in it or not. The same way, existentially, the universe doesn't care if you are walking around on Earth or not in the grand cosmic sense.
I don't know. The space pirates seemed to care when I was flying around with 6 vortex cubes in my cargo hold.
See, that's an entirely different thing. But the artistic statement there is just sometimes life is a grind. It's kind of like a literal, just mechanics to art kind of thing. And sometimes the universe is a big, cold, uncaring place, and you are only as good as the resources in your cargo hold. If you have more resources, more people will be coming after you. If you're taking more stuff from your area, sentinels will come and kill you. I don't know. That metaphor kind of broke down.
Do you think that it really is? I mean, do you really think it's that thoughtful about the themes?
I think so. I mean,
okay.
That's the only thing I can think of. And at a certain point, it doesn't really matter what they intended with their game design, because that's the message the game design puts forward.
Okay.
And there's in literary circles, there's a really influential author. I don't want to use the word author for reasons you'll see in a second, but a thinker, we'll say, named Roland Barthes, who wrote a very influential essay called Death of the Author, and which basically puts forward the idea that it doesn't matter what the original intention of an author was.
Yeah.
Because each person brings their own set of experiences to what he's talking about in his essay is a novel or a book. Everyone brings their own experiences to that and will interpret it differently according to those experiences. And so it doesn't necessarily matter what the intent behind the work was. And that also has wider implications for other forms of media, including video games. So I always think it's interesting to know what the original intent was. I would certainly be interested in hearing what Hello Games thinks the artistic statement of their game is.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, the mechanics, from my interpretation anyway, kind of push this cosmic sense of insignificance. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I should follow it up by saying that. I think it's interesting, and I think that's also what leads to kind of that sense of discovery. You're this small, insignificant dot, and you're only seeing, in the grand scheme of things, a small, insignificant fraction of the entire universe.
Right.
And as much as we as humans, I would think, we're a very curious species. We like finding out new things, and I think if you offered the chance to anyone, they would say, yeah, I would love to know what's going on across the entire universe. I'd love to see all the things that are out there.
Yeah.
Just like in real life, that's not a real possibility in No Man's Sky. You only see the small fraction available to you out of an almost infinite variety.
Yeah. Well, I think it's actually interesting, the death of the author correlation, because, I mean, I can't think of too many games where that is more true than No Man's Sky. Not just for the simple fact that this is a very unauthored game. You know, they had control over the algorithm that created this galaxy and everything, and they certainly,
background of pieces that is
right
from
they
which
created
everything is stitched.
Exactly, the building blocks essentially for it. But what the algorithm ended up doing with it was really kind of out of their hands. And then, so not just for that reason, but also just from reading tons of reviews. I've been just poring over the reviews because I find them fascinating. Because everyone, not freaking kidding, everyone comes away with a different experience from this game based on their own prior experiences and based on what they brought to it. Like you said, if you are the type of person, I think one of the better reviews I've read of it was from John Walker at Rock Paper Shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
He basically said that he's the type of person that likes walking simulators. He's the type of person that doesn't need a game to constantly point him in the direction he needs to go, and he's the type of person that likes to find his own fun in games. Mm-hmm. He used Far Cry. He's like, when he plays Far Cry, he ignores the objectives and the dots on the map and just goes and finds badgers to hunt or things to do. And No Man's Sky is really well designed for those kind of people. But other people that maybe want a more directed experience, or even people that are expecting, everybody came into this game with different expectations for what it would be. And so depending on what you expected and what you really wanted this game to be, you're going to come away feeling a different way about it, unfortunately.
Well, and also, it's not just the different expectations that people brought to the game. but everyone is invariably, given the nature and size and scope of this game,
Right.
going to have a different experience. Like, there are some cases where I'm sure there are some people who are very justified in being like, this is a terribly bland experience. Because maybe they only encountered terribly bland planets. Like, that is entirely possible given how huge everything is.
Yep. It is totally possible. I've been to 3 star systems now, and I've seen one planet that I'd want to revisit. And it was awesome. Mm-hmm. It was great. It was a fantastic planet. And I spent as much time there as I felt comfortable doing. I documented almost all of the species, and I found all of the outposts. Mm-hmm. But then the rest of them have just been rocks or like poisonous, terrible places trying to kill me. Mm-hmm. Even the planet I started on was trying to kill me with like this poison rain. But that's okay. I still am having a great time with it.
Yeah, and you also mentioned that it's kind of directionless.
Yeah.
And I think it has there's a good metaphor in there somewhere about, at least this is how I took it, but the Atlas and religion.
See, I'm not following the Atlas path, so maybe I'm getting different stuff than you.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm also not as far as you probably are.
Did you reject the Atlas at first?
I honestly don't even remember getting that option.
Oh,
like everybody mentions right at the beginning, you get the option to follow the Atlas path, wander on your own, or go straight for the center.
Yeah, there was
all I got was
there was a little doohickey at your crash site.
Maybe I missed that. Maybe I never got that.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I've run into a few of them since then, so I'm sure you have options later on. It's not like one time thing.
My first jump, hyperspace jump, I had options for different paths to follow, and one was marked Atlas, one was marked, the core or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I'm going towards the core at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like I think there's because you also have the option to just free roam.
Right.
And so I think there's an interesting point to be made there that, between maybe no direction or some direction, even if it's arbitrary, even if you don't know exactly what it is you're following or why you're doing it, people usually seem to gravitate towards something rather than an infinity of options,
Right.
And I think that's an interesting point.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting because people crave direction.
Right.
Like they need somewhere, and normally I do too. So it's kind of weird that I'm enjoying this game as much as I am.
But your direction has been going towards the center.
Yeah.
Sort
of.
Because the game itself lays out that path for you.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm taking my time. Right. I'm spending a lot of time in each star system. I've only been to 3 because I've exhausted every single planet and explored each one pretty thoroughly in each star system.
I will say I cannot for the life of me discover every single animal on any of the planets I'm on.
I tried really hard on the one that was bustling with life, and I couldn't. There were like a dozen, and I had like 3 that I couldn't find.
Yeah, I got real close once. I was just looking for one animal, and I spent like 3 hours, and I was just like, screw this. I'm on something literally the size of a planet.
Yeah,
it could be anywhere.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I've found. Like, planets actually have some variety, pretty good amount of variety within them. Like, tonight I was walking around, and maybe not variety, maybe that's not the best, but they have just things that might surprise you. Like, I'm walking around this one planet right now, just farming it for gold and vortex cubes because it's full of them. And it's great.
Where do you get those from?
The vortex cubes?
Yeah.
They're little floating cubes. You'll know them when you see them.
I have not seen any of those.
Well,
I have come across planets that are full of these egg-type things.
Okay, I have not seen those.
If you open them up, they have these pearls inside that you can sell for buckets of money.
Oh, I've heard about those. Yeah.
And the item description is that they're eggs from like some long dormant race or something. I found this planet that was just covered in them, and every time you pick one up and pick up one of those pearls, it starts a level 3 Sentinel response.
Guess what happens when you pick up a vortex cube?
Level 3 Sentinel response?
Yep. Which is maybe a little bit disappointing, but I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the first time that happened to me, I was super surprised. I didn't know.
Yep.
It was just like, oh, free stuff. All right, awesome. And then, because also, this is a dead planet. There's no animals on it. Mm-hmm. And it said at the beginning when I landed, it said, Sentinels passive. So I'm like, sweet, they're not going to bother me.
Yeah.
Well,
Boy, were
apparently
you wrong.
They will if you pick up a vortex cube. Just mining, they kind of ignore me, but because there's also just gold deposits everywhere, and so I'll just sit and shoot at one of those for like 5 minutes, and then run to another one and shoot at it. It's great, and then I just go back to the space station and cash it in. It's fantastic.
I think one of the ways I mentioned this in the last episode, but Jim Sterling said, you have to be able to suspend your disbelief to enjoy No Man's Sky. Mm-hmm. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but that was the essential idea. And I think that's really true. You have to be able to just kind of accept the fact that you're on a new planet with new creatures, and you have to ignore that it's being drawn, that all those creatures and the different parts of the planet are being drawn by an algorithm from a set pool of things.
Right.
It's not truly infinite. As far as I know, you're not going to be coming across like a blob creature, like a slug, like a slug blob. You're not going to be coming across a sentient ball of electricity or something weird.
Right.
Which to me is a little disappointing because
it is a little disappointing. Yeah.
In my head, and this is one of the experiences I'm bringing to it that it did not live up to. I'm thinking it's going to be like Star Trek, where you encounter an entire planet full of weird gas creatures or something.
Yeah.
And there's nothing really like that, but it doesn't mean there couldn't be in a future update or a patch, which will be interesting to see.
Right.
But I think, at least as it is right now, No Man's Sky is kind of like playing with Legos. You have to have that imagination to fill in the gaps in your experience.
That's so funny.
And if you aren't the kind of person who has that kind of mind, and nothing against those kinds of people, it's just sometimes it's harder for some people than it is for others.
Yeah.
You won't be able to enjoy it as much because you need to be able to. For example, I found a dead planet too, and it seemed to be covered in an awful lot of ruins and monoliths, and in my head I just concocted, because there's a certain degree of like fictional anthropology to this game too.
Yeah,
where
I wish there was more.
Yeah,
that's probably my biggest wish.
Yeah,
but yeah,
like I concocted kind of like a mini history of this planet in my head. I was just like, oh, there's the Gek used to live here, and obviously something terrible must have happened because none are here now. It's a dead world and all this stuff. And so you have to be able to put these pieces together and then find it interesting. And if you don't find that interesting, you're not going to enjoy the game.
Right.
And that's not your fault, or I don't think it's also the game's fault. It's just not all games appeal to all people.
And that's the thing about this game, is that so many people thought that it was going to appeal to them.
Right.
But I think you're totally right about the Legos thing, because, and it's funny that you would say that, because this game brought me back to when I was a little kid and I was playing with my brother's hand-me-down astronaut space Legos from like the 70s. And it was amazing the other night. I finally finished on the planet that was just full of life, and bid that planet adieu. I had named it Mystic. Each of my solar systems are named after states in the United States.
Okay.
That's how I'm doing it. and then each planet is named after a different town from that state.
Okay.
So specifically, my first solar system was Connecticut, and that planet was Mystic. So then I jumped and went to the next solar system, Massachusetts, obviously, and landed on this moon. And it was the complete opposite from Mystic. It was not lively at all. It was dead. It was a dead moon. It looked like our moon in a lot of ways. And just filling the horizon was its planet. And it just looked so cool. And I just got this like rush of nostalgia for when I used to be really innocent and think about the cosmos and space. So I totally get that. And what you said about like filling in the spaces and stuff with your imagination, I've been doing that too, because the other day I was playing on another planet and wandering through a giant network of caves. And these caves are massive. The caves in that game are huge. And as I'm going through it, it's just snaking around. And I'm like, what made this cave? Like, I'm thinking to myself, and I was literally talking out loud to myself. I talk to myself a lot playing this game, which I don't do with any other game. It's funny. So I'm like, what the heck could have made this cave? I'm walking through and I'm like, looking around. It's all perfectly cylindrical, but it's like ridged. You know, it looks carved out. This cave did not form from natural rock formations or anything like that. Something made this cave. So I was just going through my mind like, this was a freaking giant sandworm. Or
this is a dune worm.
Yeah. Also, I'm rereading Dune right now because of this game. Yeah. So that was awesome. Like that was just the game that, you know, like, I don't know if they meant for that to happen, or I don't know if like maybe there was a giant sandworm on this planet and I just didn't get a chance to see it. I don't know. But it was still cool, and that's me. Yeah. Not everybody is going to get that from this game.
Well, and you know, I think part of it is there's so much potential in No Man's Sky for greater things, because I'm 99% sure that they don't actually have giant sandworms in No Man's Sky.
Actually, I did read an article. They did come out and say, I don't know if they tweeted it or what, I can't remember, but they did say that they did confirm that there are giant sandworms, because they knew that the community was looking for them. So they did say that there are giant sandworms and other giant creatures, but they're just very, 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 very rare.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah. But you were saying, sorry.
Well, it's just there are so many little things and big things that I feel would improve the experience of No Man's Sky that I'm disappointed it aren't in there at release. I understand why, though. It's a small team. They've had their work entirely destroyed once.
Yeah.
And survived 2 lawsuits or something. So, but just something simple like the ability to save planets that you really like, be able to return to them.
Yeah. Pin them. I just want to be able to pin.
Yeah.
Put a pin on them so I can get back to them.
Put a little star next to them so you can come back to that system.
Yep.
And they've said they're going to add base building. I would love to be able to build like a really cool little place somewhere on a cool planet and be able to go back there.
Right.
Or just be like, hey, this is a neat place. I want to further explore it later, but right now I want to go do my own thing. So, there are things like that, and just expanding the pool of potential creatures. I haven't found personally many creatures that I thought were really interesting. I think the most interesting thing I've found so far was this thing that was kind of built like a gazelle, but instead of like a normal gazelle head, it had like basically just an esophagus with teeth.
I've seen that. I think a lot of people are getting those kind of things because I've seen pictures of those things.
It was cool. It was cool looking. I liked it. And then I also found like these really, really stupid looking giant. They're basically like giant armadillos, but with very tiny feet. And then they didn't walk around. They flew around on wings, but really, really tiny wings. And so they were basically just hovering like 3 feet off the ground. These giant, stupid-looking animals.
That's awesome.
It's not like there was just like one. It was like herds of them. It was the dumbest planet I've been to so far, but it was really...
That's great.
It was great. And the planet was radioactive, so my reasoning behind that was just the radiation, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Mutated them.
I would like to see animals interact with each other a little more.
Yeah.
Like, I have seen... the other night, and this is another example of me kind of filling in the blanks myself, I was playing and I found a herd of... Like, not a herd, like, I don't know, a group of, like, maybe 6 or 7 of these little cow stegosaurus things. And so I followed them around, and they really were, just like Alan Grant said, they do move in herds. And they were moving all together, and they had a little baby one that was moving around with them and kind of just running around them. And I decided to feed the baby, and then the baby was following me around, and I was like, oh God, no, go back. They're gonna get mad at me. Like, if you keep following me around, your parents are gonna get mad. Go back with your parents. So I just left the baby alone. But I'd like to see more of, like, the animals interacting with each other. I don't know. And then
I would like to see a wider array of, like, ecology, just, like, plants and stuff on planets, because so far most of the planets I've been on are either barren rocks or very sparsely vegetated.
Oh, man. That was the other thing about that lively planet I went to, Mystic, was grass. There were grassy plains everywhere and tons of pretty trees and yeah. Mm-hmm. That's too bad. Because they're there. They're out there. Like, they exist.
I just haven't found them yet.
Yeah. But like you said, there's a bit of anthropology to this game. I think it's more naturology than anthropology, because there's not really civilizations. I mean, there's a little bit of anthropology with the Gek and the Viking and the Korvax and the other one that I haven't even discovered yet or heard of, but I saw a picture of them. But anyway, but not much. Like, I want to stumble across a long dead civilization or and not, and I want it to look like a civilization.
That is one of the
not
things.
Just
I haven't found any collection of, like, I haven't found any cities or anything like that.
Right.
I don't know if they're out there or not, but
I don't know.
I something tells me I don't think there are.
No. And I want to meet a society. Like, I want to meet a group of people.
More than just the three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to interact with them in meaningful ways. And learning the languages is really cool. I actually really like that whole thing. Learning the words piece by piece.
I'm maxed out on my milestones for those.
What do you mean? How do you max out? What?
So the game like keeps track of things like how far you've moved, how many ships you've brought down, how many sentinels you've killed.
I see.
How many words you've learned is one of them.
But you can continue to learn words.
You can continue to learn words. I just reached milestone 10, which is, I guess, the highest you can get.
Okay. Gotcha.
I'm really good at talking to Gek, let me tell you.
That's good. So yeah, there's still a lot of potential for this game, but I actually still really like it. It might be my game of the year. I like it that much. So.
Okay. What
Yeah.
What makes you like it that much rather than just say it's a good indie game?
Because every time I've played it so far, I've had a blast. And I never know what's going to happen when I sit down to play it for the night. And I've been typically playing for like an hour and a half at the end of the night before I go to bed. And every time I play, something interesting happens. Whether, like, the other night, I was taking off from a launch pad and a ship, like a larger cargo type ship, kind of pulled in front of me and was just kind of hovering around. And I followed it around for a little while and then decided to start shooting it because why not? So I was like, and we were in atmosphere and I decided to shoot it and it was great. Like, I could do that. And just discovering, like, the things that you can do and the limits to the game. And then, getting it. Like, I don't mind the ship controls. I wish that there were missiles.
Mm-hmm.
I wish you had missiles. Because that would just be helpful. And I don't like... There's a lot about the inventory and other stuff that I do not like.
The inventory is the worst thing to me. I hate having to manage that inventory constantly.
Right.
And
me too.
For a long time, the only thing I was doing was saving up money so I could buy a bigger ship.
Right. That's what I'm doing right now, actually.
And you know what? I have so much personal inventory space because every single time I find one of those drop pods with an upgrade, definitely buy that. Definitely.
Oh yeah, I do every time.
But it never seems like enough.
Well, I want them to. This is an aside, but I want them to fix the like, you can't stack like items. You can stack like resources, but not items.
Yeah.
Which is really obnoxious.
Well,
like
for example, right now I have an entire inventory full of warp cells.
Right.
And it makes me a target everywhere I go, and I can't pick up anything, so there's no point exploring any of the planets I come across, because I don't have any inventory space, so I might as well just go until I run out of warp cells. And I'm not sure if that's intentional on their part, to encourage you to keep moving.
Yeah.
But I don't like that. Just let me stack those warp cells on one square. If I can store 1,000 units of gold in my cargo bay,
right?
I'm pretty sure I can store more than just one cell in a square.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, same. I'm having the same problem with shield shards. And then Wait. Oh, and upgrades, like upgrades to your suit and your
Yeah.
ship, take up inventory slots, and that's just why. Like those don't need to take up slots.
Well, initially I
in your inventory.
thought that they were going to just replace what I had previously. They don't do that.
No, they don't. No. I was walking around for a while with like something for my gun that was like a rapid fire Sigma and a rapid fire Tau, and I'm like, wait a second, those both do the same thing, but one is stronger.
Yeah.
Like, I need to get rid of one of these.
Well, and I'm not sure if those stack or not.
No.
They don't?
No.
Okay. That brings us back to something I find very irritating about the upgrade system is that basically it becomes this loop of, in order to be stronger, you need to use more inventory space. But in order to use more inventory space and like still pick things up, you need to get bigger ships. And so basically the harder things get, you're never getting more inventory space. You're just filling up your old your bigger inventory space with more installation of these upgrades.
Right.
And that gets really irritating.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And so
I
guess to me that evens out to just, those small irritations kind of add up. And on the whole, I really appreciate the artistic statements that No Man's Sky is making, and I still really, I'm curious about the universe and want to see more of what's out there, but that's why I'm just saying it's pretty good.
So, you asked why I would say it's like
possibly
my game of the year. And I think it's because, objectively speaking, if I were to like write a review of this game, it would get an 8.
Yeah.
Out of 10.
It's about where I am.
Yeah. I really like it, but I actually, like, I was hyping my brother and my dad up for this game, and my nephew. Like, I was playing Rocket League with my nephew this weekend, and he asked me about it, like, how is it? And I think he would like it, because he likes Minecraft and Goat Simulator and Terraria. Yeah. So I think he would enjoy it. But, like, I don't know that I could see my brother or my dad enjoying this game. So I have trouble recommending it to people just wholeheartedly. But for me personally, it almost feels like it was made for me. I was thinking about it today. Like, the open world is perfect for me. The open worlds are perfect because unlike something like Far Cry, which especially Far Cry 4, I got so burned out on that game because it was constantly pulling me in different directions and trying to tell me to do this or do that. And it was having me do all these side quests and stuff that I really didn't care for and didn't really want to do. And No Man's Sky does not do that. It has a ton of different waypoints. I was walking around tonight and I had a million different markers on my screen. But I didn't have to.
By the way,
I didn't have to follow them.
Hello Games, give us the option to turn off all the UI.
Yeah,
please, so that we can take cool pictures and screenshots.
Right. Also, give us the option to flip the sprint button.
Oh yes,
even though I've totally gotten used to using R3, but also
I was irritated. There's no way to remap the controls.
Yeah, it is. It is really irritating. Pro tip? Have you learned how to melee rocket jump or jetpack?
What?
Okay, so next time you're playing, hit the melee button, R1, and then really quickly hit X.
Okay.
Afterwards, and you have to do it. You have to time it just right, and it will launch you forward instead of up, and you go really far, really fast.
Really?
It's great for covering long distances.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to give that a shot.
I was wandering towards waypoints tonight that would typically say like 2 minutes or so, and it would take me about 30 seconds to a minute to get there.
Wow.
Even though it said 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Travel time. So it's a lot quicker. But anyway, the open world is designed for me in that it's more of a sparse open world. It reminds me of Shadow of the Colossus in that it's there and you can explore it if you would like to, but there's not necessarily a ton of incentive to do so. And there is stuff there. There is stuff, but nothing's demanding that you do it. You know, you might have a question mark on your screen telling you that there's something over here. You could go check it out, or you could ignore it, and you could go just see what's over the next hill, you know, and I love that. And I love the sense of wonder and awe that I've gotten from it. I've probably put in about 15 hours so far, so I'm not super far into it, but I'm just what I've played so far, I'm really enjoying, and I enjoy just making my own fun and using my imagination to fill in the blanks, which I think it might sound stupid, but it's something that video games have kind of lost since they've become bigger and more polished.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we didn't really talk about when we talked about games aiming for a cinematic approach. In a cinematic approach to games, you don't leave those blanks to be filled in.
Right.
You know, you show, and if it's not shown,
right,
then you don't have to think about it. So I agree with you 100% there.
I mean, a big thing for me when I think about games that I loved from my youth, a lot of them were just about the potential and my imagination filling in what could be happening in the margins. Half-Life, for example, tells you a lot about what's going on in that game and the story, but there's also so much on the edges that it doesn't tell you. Like, who is the G-Man? What does he do? You know, what is everybody else doing right now in this facility? And they kind of...
What trauma happened to Gordon Freeman that makes him not talk or be compelling or interesting in any way?
Well, that's part of it, too. Like, what is Gordon thinking? You know? And that's your imagination. Your imagination has to fill in those blanks.
Nope. Sorry.
Nope.
Sorry. Silent protagonists do not get a pass from me. They do not get a pass in that regard.
Whatever. This is not a critique of Half-Life, but
if
like,
it was,
that's part
Half-Life
of what
sucks.
I loved. And also, like, Link to the Past, I feel the same way about Super Metroid. Like, these games allow you to kind of fill in the blanks with your imagination, and games don't do that often enough anymore. And this game really does that, and I love it for that. And I love that it's doing something innovative with the technology rather than just more powerful.
Well, at the same time, maybe the argument is that there's nothing. Maybe showing and not making you imagine something is better than making you imagine it.
Right.
You know, what's so great about filling it in with your imagination when we have the technology to just fill it in without your imagination?
Yeah, why read a book when you can watch a movie?
Well, I mean, you say that, but there are a lot of people out there who would say that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I see where you're coming from, but just playing devil's advocate for a second, why is that imaginative approach to narrative worth keeping around?
And you could also totally make the argument that I'm giving the game a pass by saying that. And I'm fully aware of that. Like, that the problems with that game and what it's lacking aren't excused by just saying that it allows you to fill in the blanks. I totally get that. But whether intentional or not, I enjoy it.
Well, yeah, I get what you're saying. You're saying that you would give, objectively, you would probably give it an 8.
Yep.
But what puts it kind of over the edge for you is, personal things. Like you said, your memory of playing Legos and that sense of discovery, even if it's imagining discovery,
Yep.
I get that.
Would I call it a best games period yet, Jack? I can't make that call yet.
Yeah, I'm I mean, it just came out a few weeks ago. I'm interested to see how future updates kind of guide this game in the long term. Because I see a lot of potential for improvement. I also see maybe a lot of potential for screwing things up. You always open the door up to that when you open your game up to updates.
Yep.
So I wouldn't go one way or the other on it right now. But if you put a gun to my head and forced me to pick one, I would say no. But this is one of the reasons we don't typically talk about games that just came out.
Right. No, I know.
People are
I was
still
just
all
saying
figuring
it as a
out
joke.
How they feel about it.
Yeah.
So we just talked about No Man's Sky for almost an hour.
Yeah, that was good.
And that brings us to the end of this not quite episode of the Best Games Period. If you like the show, please share it with your friends. Maybe even consider subscribing. We're on iTunes, SoundCloud, and you can also find us every Monday, usually. This week was an exception, on both GameInformer.com, community.extra-life.org. And speaking of Extra Life, you know what's really amazing? Helping kids in hospitals. And you know what's even better than just your run-of-the-mill helping kids in hospitals? Being able to play games and help kids at the same time. And that's what Extra Life is all about. So every year, this year it's November 5th, Extra Life helps put on video game marathons all across North America. And each person who signs up gets to choose which Children's Miracle Network hospital they want to raise money for. And all the money they raise from friends, family, strangers, 100% of it goes directly to that hospital. So not only are you raising money for the kids, you know where it's going, and you know 100% of it is going directly to that hospital for the purpose of paying for treatment for sick and injured kids. None of it's shaved off the top for administrative fees, anything like that. So 100% of it. That's pretty amazing. If you want to know more, you can head over to extra-life.org. You can learn more about it. You can sign up. You can send that URL off to your friends and grandma who plays Bejeweled and get them all to sign up or donate to you. And we can start doing some good in the world with video games and kids, or board games and kids, or just games and kids. It's pretty awesome. And if you want to get more involved in the community, head over to community.extra-life.org, where you can find this very podcast, and you can join in on the community side of things and talk with people on the forums, comment on articles about gaming, and have a rip-roaring good time. With that, we'll be seeing you next week with an episode on Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. It should be a good one. Might even be a divisive one. We'll have to see. But with that all being said, see you on the flippity-dippity, as Daniel says at the end of every episode now for some reason.